In relation to Libya, sanctions, no-fly zones, travel bans, what are people talking about?
Well, the European delegations who really pushed for this meeting to take place here at the United Nations today are saying that everything is on the table, including a Chapter 7 resolution. That's a term that refers to a resolution that will, in fact, contain sanctions, the harshest and strongest kind of resolution that the Security Council could ask for. And the options being floated about are exactly what you said, the possibility of a travel ban for Gaddafi and his other leaders, other people in the regime who are seen as helping him in this crackdown, asset freezes, and really a whole range of options that could be discussed. The no-fly zone is something else that's been brought up. The Libyan ambassador, deputy ambassador to the UN, requested that. This is an official who has broken ranks from the leader of the country and came and asked the Security Council to impose a no-fly zone over the country to stop the leadership from using airplanes and the like to attack civilians. So all of this is on the table, but at this stage the 15 members of the council have agreed to have a meeting, and that's about it. Getting them to agree on a text is another matter altogether. So we don't expect action this afternoon here in New York, just discussion in the first stages of getting a resolution passed.
So we're not even going to see a strongly worded statement or anything like that?
I think some of the ambassadors will probably speak to the media after the meeting and talk about where they're going and what they hope to accomplish, but the likelihood of them coming out of this meeting with a document agreed upon is very slim, very slim. The Russian delegation told AlJazeera yesterday that they think it's too soon to be talking about sanctions. They want more credible information, as they called it, coming from Libya to see exactly what the situation is there. They will get a briefing from Secretary General Ban Ki-moon today on this latest information from the scene. But these things traditionally take time. It's not unusual for a sanctions resolution to take weeks or even months to be negotiated. Every word is parsed and all of the details are looked at very carefully by nations' capitals before they come back here to the UN and vote a resolution through. Of course, the situation in Libya is very urgent, and members of the European delegations are saying that they need action, not just monitoring the situation isn't enough. So it'll be interesting to see if they can turn it around more quickly than usual here.
Okay, Kristen, thanks very much indeed for that. Kristen Salumi at the United Nations there. Well, as we've been saying, there have been a raft of protests and demonstrations across the region. Demonstrations against government corruption and poor living conditions have been taking place in cities across Iraq. Some violence between protesters and riot police has broken out in Baghdad. At least 2 people have been killed in the northern city of Hawija. Tarek Basley reports.
The spirit of protest very much alive in Iraq. Despite the capital and virtual security lockdown, thousands took to the streets. Their day of rage inspired by recent events in North Africa.
Our demands is the following. First, prevent corruption by making laws to prevent that and apply it correctly for the favorite of the Iraqi people.
Soldiers searched protesters trying to enter Liberation Square. They barricaded a bridge leading to the city's so-called Green Zone government area. At one point, protesters threw stones at riot police, who forced them back against the wall. In the southern city, Basra, around 3,000 also took to the streets to protest against corruption and a lack of basic services. Concrete slabs surrounding the Basra government building were knocked over. Clashes too with riot police in Mosul, where provincial government offices were set on fire. 8 years after the US-led invasion and the fall of Saddam Hussein, there's clear anger on the streets. Development has been slow to come to the country, and after recent events in the region, there are fears that anger could drive a broader call for change. Tarek Basley, AlJazeera.
Well, with me in the studio is Faris Bryzat, researcher at the Arab Centre for Research and Policy Studies here in Doha. Good to have you with us. Clearly a lot of anger going on amongst the protesters. We know that the government wanted to stop these protests, accusing the organisers of being Saddam loyalists and Baathists. Who are these protesters?
Well, I think those protesters are ordinary Iraqi people who are fed up with the way the government is handling their affairs. Since the fall of the former regime in Iraq, not much happened in terms of development. You still have scarce water resources, electricity shortages, power cuts, polluted environment, government corruption.
Why has it been so slow to have these problems sorted out?
I think the fact that always the Iraqi government have talked about security concerns and security obstacles to development. I think this is an over-exaggeration of the realities on the ground, because they could have done a lot better in areas where there was no serious security challenge to the authority of the government. But I think there is a great deal of corruption and a great deal of political maneuvering among the rival sectarian political factions in Iraq that did not allow serious development efforts to take root inside Iraq. And I think this is a legitimate uprising against an inefficient government in Iraq. Now, I think the most important message that comes out of this protest today in Iraq, and it is the fact that it's across the country, across sectarian, 14 governorates in Iraq are witnessing demonstrations at
no specific political parties,
no specific political party, and actually the organizers who were who were leading this effort over the past 7 days or so to build the momentum. They were specifically asking youth, Iraqi youth, not to have banners with sectarian slogans or political attached to sectarian language or any of that. And they insisted on being an Iraqi, insisted on specific demands, empowerment of the people, and delivering services in areas that are badly needed in Iraq in terms of water, etc.
Now, is the West also to blame for not putting enough pressure on the Iraqi government to sort these problems out, to sort out corruption, to sort out government services?
Surely, I think there is a very serious diplomatic problem here between, or political problem between the West on one hand and the Iraqis on the other. And the problem is the United States and its allies, they have shown by deeds and by actions that they are more interested in oil flow than the security of the Iraqi people. And what we have seen, 8 years of American occupation so far, and we have not seen improvements. And they have allied themselves with al-Maliki and with other people who prove time and again that they are not Democrats. They tend to have very serious authoritarian tendencies, and they have been supported despite all these showings of authoritarian tendencies and despotic even in some occasions. Now, the West in general, the United States in particular, is partly to blame for that, because they have allowed the intervention and the external forces, whether it's Iran or other players, to intervene and block the natural growth of the political process in Iraq. And they blocked also significant sections and sections of the Iraqi society to take effective part in the political process. And even after the March elections of last year, we have not seen significant pressure from the United States and its allies in order to bring about a proper democratic, legitimate.
A lot of people felt cheated by that whole political process.
Absolutely. Now, what is the international community or people calling for international intervention in Libya or in other places? And I think this is not going to be helpful, because you don't think the US or the West should intervene? I don't think. I think if they want to serve, if they want to help, they should stay out. And stay out because the people of Libya and the people of Egypt, as the people of Tunisia before, the people of Iraq today, are taking matters into their own hands. And what we have seen in Yemen, just allow me to say this one, because in Yemen even, while the Yemenis are going out in hundreds of thousands protesting against Ali Abdullah Saleh, we hear the United States is putting more money into the counter-terrorism effort that the Yemeni government is doing on behalf of the Americans in Yemen. Now, there is a gap of trust. I think people in the region do not trust the American policy, do not trust the British or the French for that matter, or the Italians in Libya for that matter. So therefore, I would strongly recommend that if they want to intervene, their intervention should be, if they can, deliver a humanitarian aid, and if they can set up an international tribunal for Gaddafi and people like him who slaughtered their peoples over decades. Now, if they really need to do something serious that will bring the morality to their foreign policy and the ethics to their foreign policy, they should do something along these lines. Now, imposing sanctions on Libya, not on Gaddafi regime, means that Libya will have to continue to suffer. As we have seen in Iraq before, they imposed sanctions on Iraq, and Iraq is still today under Chapter 7, and it's not easy for them to get out of these sanctions. And now you get with that, if you try to get out of Chapter 7 and all the sanctions and the impositions as a result of these sanctions, or these resolutions, all sorts of interventions are going to be allowed. The Italians, for example, in Libya, would insist on a certain deal, and if they want to support the lifting of the sanctions, they will have to get something in return. So we strongly encourage people to keep away this intervention,
as
and not to get
correspondent was saying, it's going to take quite some time before anything is agreed at the Security Council. First, thanks very much indeed for that. First prize at that. There. Let's go to Al Jazeera's Jane Araf, who is in Baghdad. Jane, tell us what you've been seeing and what you've been hearing.
Well, Shuli, we've just come back from Tahrir Square, and we understand that in the past few minutes, firing has actually broken out. The riot police, we're told by protesters who have talked to us from the scene, say that the riot police have used rubber bullets. Some say they've used live bullets, but that can't be confirmed yet. And they're claiming there are people wounded and possibly dead. Now, as we were leaving, the police had said that they had not used water cannon, they had not used any other tactics, but they indicated they would be prepared to if demonstrators moved closer to the blast barriers they had set up, protecting the green zone. And that appears to be what has happened, with the riot police apparently bringing out those water cannons, setting off sound bombs, and it appears possibly using rubber bullets.
From what you could see of the protesters, were people carrying weapons? We've been hearing about people throwing stones.
The only people we saw carrying anything were stones, sticks, and shoes. They were throwing stones at the riot police. Some of the riot police were actually injured, but at the time